Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior, released in 2003, is far more than a straightforward martial arts movie. Directed by Pratya Pinkaru and choreographed by the legendary Panna Ritikrai, the film became a major showcase for the physical skill, discipline, and explosive possibilities of Muay Thai. At the center of it all is Tony Jaa, whose performance as Ting transformed him from a relatively unknown Thai performer into an internationally recognized martial arts star. The story follows Ting, a young man from the rural village of Ban Nong Pradu who has trained extensively in Muay Thai and is preparing to become a Buddhist monk. His peaceful life changes when the sacred head of the village's Buddha statue, Ong-Bak, is stolen. For the villagers, the missing head is not simply a valuable object. It represents their faith, heritage, and spiritual identity. Ting therefore volunteers to travel to Bangkok and recover it. What follows is a journey that takes him from a quiet rural community into a dangerous urban world filled with crime, underground fighting, deception, and people willing to exploit others for money. But the film's most memorable feature is the way this story becomes a platform for showcasing authentic-looking physical action. A simple story with a powerful motivation. One of the strengths of Ong-Bak is the simplicity of its central motivation. Ting is not chasing wealth, fame, revenge, or personal glory. He wants to bring the stolen Buddha head back to his community. That goal immediately establishes an important contrast between Ting and many of the people he encounters. Ting comes from a community where tradition, spirituality, and collective responsibility matter deeply. Bangkok, meanwhile, is presented as a place where money and survival can push people toward morally questionable choices. The film uses this contrast to create the foundation for Ting's journey. His mission begins with something sacred, but once he enters the city, he discovers that the stolen artifact is connected to a much larger criminal world. This allows the movie to move naturally between cultural drama and action spectacle. Rather than making Ting someone who deliberately seeks out violence, the story repeatedly places him in situations where his extraordinary physical abilities become necessary. This makes his character different from the stereotypical action hero who constantly looks for fights. Ting is quiet, disciplined, and focused. He does not need to announce that he is dangerous. The action demonstrates it. Tony Jaa's breakthrough performance. The most important element of Ong-Bak is undoubtedly Tony Jaa. Before this movie, international audiences had already seen legendary martial arts performers such as Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li. Each had developed a distinctive screen identity. Tony Jaa brought something different. His physical performance emphasized Muay Thai techniques, powerful strikes, acrobatic movement, athleticism, and an unusually intense level of physical commitment. Ting rarely feels like a character whose abilities have been created through editing tricks. Instead, the movie repeatedly encourages viewers to watch the movement itself. This was crucial to Jaa's international breakthrough. His performance created the impression that audiences were witnessing a new generation of martial arts cinema. He possessed the speed and precision required for complicated choreography, but he also had an imposing physical presence that made every strike feel significant. The result was an action hero who could communicate through movement as effectively as through dialogue. Jaa's limited reliance on traditional dramatic speeches actually strengthens Ting's mystique. He is primarily defined by what he does rather than what he says. Muay Thai as the film's identity. The film's title itself announces its central artistic idea. Muay Thai is not merely an accessory to the story. It is part of the movie's identity. The action choreography emphasizes elbows, knees, kicks, punches, jumps, and rapid combinations. These movements give the fights a distinctive rhythm. Rather than making every confrontation look identical, the movie varies its physical encounters. Ting faces different opponents and environments, forcing him to adapt. This helps the action maintain momentum. The choreography also reflects Ting's training and discipline. His movements are not presented as random aggression. There is control behind the violence. That distinction is important. The film celebrates martial arts as a discipline while simultaneously using it as entertainment. Ting's physical abilities are extraordinary, but his personality remains restrained. The contrast creates one of the movie's defining characteristics. The calmer Ting becomes, the more spectacular the action around him can become. The journey from village to Bangkok. Ting's movement from Ban Nong Pradu to Bangkok is more than a geographical transition. It represents a collision between two worlds. The village is associated with tradition, community, spirituality, and simplicity. Bangkok is portrayed as fast-moving, crowded, commercially driven, and dangerous. When Ting arrives in the city, he is immediately out of his comfort zone. He has the physical ability to survive, but he lacks familiarity with the social environment. This creates opportunities for other characters to influence his journey. Among them is Humley, also known as George, a character whose personality contrasts sharply with Ting's. Humley is more concerned with money and survival, and his decisions frequently create complications. Pumwari Yodkamol's Mu Lek also becomes an important part of the story, adding another perspective to Ting's urban experience. The supporting characters help prevent the movie from becoming a continuous sequence of fights. They introduce humor, conflict, deception, and emotional tension. Humor provides a necessary balance. Although Ong-Bak is famous for its physical intensity, it is not relentlessly serious. Humor plays an important role, especially through Humley. His personality provides a counterbalance to Ting's seriousness. This dynamic creates some of the film's lighter moments and prevents the narrative from becoming emotionally exhausting. The contrast between the two characters is particularly effective because Ting represents discipline while Humley frequently represents improvisation. One character believes in a clear mission. The other is often trying to figure out how to survive the consequences of his choices. Their relationship creates an entertaining tension that runs underneath the larger action story. The underground fighting world. As Ting becomes more deeply involved in Bangkok's criminal environment, the movie introduces underground fighting. This is where the story's themes of exploitation become particularly visible. Fighting is no longer presented as a disciplined martial art practiced for training or self-defense. Instead, physical ability becomes a commodity. People fight because someone else is willing to pay. The underground environment therefore represents a distorted version of martial arts culture. Ting's skills were developed through discipline and tradition, but the criminal world sees those skills primarily as entertainment or a means of making money. This creates an important thematic contrast. The same physical ability can represent honor in one environment and exploitation in another. The villain and the world around him. The movie's antagonistic forces are connected to the criminal networks surrounding the stolen Buddha head. Rather than presenting evil as something supernatural, Ong-Bak keeps its conflict grounded in human greed. The sacred object has value because someone believes it can be sold or used for personal gain. That creates a direct conflict between communal values and individual greed. The Buddha head belongs symbolically to the people of Ban Nong Pradu, yet criminals treat it as an object that can be bought and sold. Ting's mission therefore becomes more than recovering stolen property. He is attempting to restore something that his community considers sacred. Action without overcomplication. One reason the movie remains memorable is that it understands the value of clarity. The action is usually easy to follow. Ting enters a confrontation. The opponent attacks. Ting responds. The choreography builds. The physical stakes increase. The audience understands what is happening without needing lengthy explanations. This simplicity allows viewers to focus on the movement. The film does not require complicated visual effects to make its hero impressive. Instead, the physical performer becomes the spectacle. That approach was particularly refreshing for viewers accustomed to increasingly elaborate computer-generated action. Practical physicality. The movie's action sequences became one of its defining selling points because they emphasize practical physical performance. The choreography frequently places Jar in situations requiring remarkable athletic control. His ability to jump, spin, strike, land, and move through confined spaces gives the action an almost live performance quality. This makes the viewer appreciate the human effort behind the scene. The physical risks associated with such filmmaking also contribute to the movie's intensity. Even when audiences understand that the action has been carefully choreographed, the movements still appear dangerous. That perception creates excitement. The chase for the sacred artifact. The stolen Buddha head provides the narrative thread connecting the various action sequences. Without it, the movie could easily become a collection of disconnected fights. Instead, the artifact gives Ting a destination. Every obstacle matters because he has a specific objective. The pursuit also creates emotional stakes. The villagers are waiting for the return of something they consider sacred, while Ting carries the responsibility of completing the mission. His determination becomes the emotional center of the movie. Tradition versus modernity. Another interesting aspect of Ong-Bak is the tension between traditional culture and modern urban life. Ting comes from a community where spiritual traditions remain deeply meaningful. Bangkok represents a modern environment where money, crime, nightlife, and commercial interests dominate much of the story. The movie does not necessarily suggest that modernity itself is evil. Instead, it highlights what can happen when cultural values are overshadowed by greed. The stolen Buddha head becomes a powerful symbol within that conflict. It is ancient, spiritual, and culturally important. The people who steal it see something completely different. To them, it has financial value. The disagreement over its meaning becomes one of the movie's underlying themes. Why Ting works as an action hero. Ting is effective because his personality is almost the opposite of what audiences might expect from a martial arts superstar. He is not arrogant. He does not constantly boast about his skills. He does not appear interested in becoming famous. He simply wants to accomplish his mission. This humility makes the action more impressive. When a quiet character suddenly demonstrates extraordinary physical ability, the contrast creates excitement. Ting's restraint also gives him an almost mythic quality. He feels like someone who has trained for years and has no need to prove himself. The importance of Pana Ritikrai. The film's action identity is inseparable from Pana Ritikrai, whose work in martial arts choreography helped shape the physical language of the movie. The choreography does not simply ask, "How can this fight look bigger?" Instead, it asks, "What can the performer physically do?" That difference is crucial. The sequences are designed around movement, impact, timing, and athletic ability. This approach helped distinguish Ong-Bak from action movies that depended heavily on wirework or visual manipulation. The film's style emphasizes the performer, and Tony Jaa was exceptionally suited to that approach. A new generation of martial arts cinema. The international success and attention surrounding Ong-Bak helped demonstrate that martial arts cinema could still produce major new stars. Tony Jaa quickly became associated with physically demanding action. His success also helped introduce international audiences to Thai action filmmaking on a larger scale. The movie effectively announced that the global martial arts landscape was not limited to established stars from Hong Kong, China, or Hollywood. Thailand had its own action vocabulary. Muay Thai could become the centerpiece of an internationally accessible martial arts film. The emotional meaning of the mission. At its heart, Ong-Bak is about responsibility. Ting accepts a responsibility that others might avoid. He knows that traveling to Bangkok will expose him to danger, unfamiliar surroundings, and criminal elements. But he still goes. That makes his journey meaningful. He is not motivated by personal ambition. His motivation comes from his community. This makes the final recovery of the Buddha head emotionally satisfying because Ting is not simply winning a fight. He is fulfilling a promise. The film's relationship with violence. The movie contains frequent martial arts combat, but its context is primarily cinematic action rather than an endorsement of real-world violence. The fights are carefully choreographed performances designed to create excitement within the story. This distinction is useful when discussing the movie for a broad YouTube audience. What makes the action compelling is not simply that characters hit each other. It is the choreography, timing, athletic skill, character motivation, and filmmaking that transform the movement into cinematic storytelling. The film's physicality is therefore best understood as a form of action spectacle. What makes the action memorable? The greatest action sequences are memorable because they combine several elements at once. First, there is physical skill. Second, there is a clear objective. Third, there is escalating danger. Fourth, there is a sense that the hero is using technique rather than simply overpowering everyone. Finally, there is the personality of the performer. Tony Jaa's physical presence gives the sequences their signature. His movements are recognizable. His timing is distinctive. and his commitment makes even relatively simple confrontations feel important. International reception and Tony Jaa's legacy. The film became Tony Jaa's breakthrough internationally. His performance attracted comparisons to previous martial arts stars while establishing his own identity. Jaa's career continued with films such as Tom Yum Goong, known internationally as The Protector in the United States and Warrior King in the United Kingdom. He also returned to the Ong-Bak universe with Ong-Bak 2 and Ong-Bak 3. This demonstrates how important the original film was to his career. It did not simply give Jaa a successful movie. It established him as an action performer audiences around the world wanted to see again. The film's greatest strength. If there is one quality that defines Ong-Bak, it is authenticity of physical performance. The story itself is relatively straightforward. The character motivations are easy to understand. The humor is accessible. But the action gives the movie its identity. A complicated plot would not necessarily have made the movie better. The filmmakers understood that their strongest asset was Tony Jaa's physical ability and built the film around it. That decision gives Ong-Bak remarkable focus. Areas where the film may feel dated. Even though the action remains influential, some aspects of the movie may feel dated to modern viewers. The story is fairly simple compared with contemporary action films that often combine multiple narrative threads. Some supporting characters can appear exaggerated. Certain moments are driven more by the needs of the action than by deep character development. The movie also belongs firmly to the early 2000s action era, and its visual presentation reflects that period. However, these limitations do not necessarily undermine its purpose. Ong-Bak is primarily an action showcase, and within that framework, its strengths remain obvious. Why the simplicity works. A common mistake in action filmmaking is assuming that bigger stories automatically produce better movies. Ong-Bak demonstrates the opposite. The basic objective is immediately understandable. Recover the stolen sacred artifact and bring it home. Everything else can grow from that objective. The simplicity allows the audience to understand the hero's purpose without confusion. It also provides the filmmakers with room to concentrate on action choreography. The story becomes the road. The action becomes the destination. A film built around movement. Ting's journey can almost be understood as a series of physical tests. Each challenge asks him to demonstrate another aspect of his ability. He must navigate unfamiliar surroundings. He encounters criminals. He enters dangerous situations. He confronts skilled opponents. And each confrontation pushes the physical spectacle further. This structure gives the movie a game-like quality. The hero advances from one challenge to the next, with each stage testing his discipline and determination. Cultural identity. Perhaps the most significant long-term achievement of Ong-Bak is the way it places Thai martial arts culture at the center of a globally accessible action movie. Muay Thai is not treated simply as decoration. It is central to the hero's identity. The film's connection to Buddhism and rural Thai culture also gives the story a distinct cultural foundation. Rather than completely copying the conventions of foreign martial arts cinema, Ong-Bak presents its own environment and traditions. That cultural specificity helped make the movie stand out internationally. Final assessment. Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior is a film whose reputation rests primarily on one extraordinary achievement. It introduced a spectacular new martial arts performer to a worldwide audience. Tony Jaa's performance as Ting gives the movie its energy, identity, and lasting appeal. The story of a young Muay Thai practitioner traveling from Ban Nong Pradu to Bangkok to recover the stolen head of a Buddha statue may be straightforward, but it provides a strong foundation for the film's action-driven narrative. The movie succeeds because it knows exactly what it wants to deliver. It wants to showcase Muay Thai. It wants to showcase Tony Jaa. It wants to create memorable practical action. And it wants to build that spectacle around a hero whose motivation is rooted in loyalty, discipline, and responsibility. The result is an action film that helped expand the international profile of Thai martial arts cinema. Its influence can be seen in the way later audiences approached Tony Jaa and in the broader recognition of Muay Thai as a cinematic martial arts style. Most importantly, Ong-Bak reminds us that an action hero does not always need complicated dialogue or a massive mythology. Sometimes, a character can earn an audience's respect simply by having a clear purpose, staying true to his values, and possessing an extraordinary physical talent. Ting begins his journey as a humble young man from a rural community. By the end, his mission has transformed him into an unforgettable action icon. And behind that transformation stands Tony Jaa, whose athletic performance turned Ong-Bak from a simple martial arts story into a landmark showcase of Thai action cinema. For viewers discovering the movie today, its plot may seem deliberately uncomplicated. But that simplicity is part of its charm. The film is not asking the audience to solve a complicated mystery. It is asking them to experience the movement, appreciate the discipline behind the choreography, and follow a determined character as he refuses to abandon his mission. That is why Ong-Bak continues to be remembered. Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior begins in a place that feels completely removed from the chaos of a major city. In the rural northeastern Thai village of Ban Nong Pradu, an ancient Buddha statue known as Ong-Bak stands as a deeply respected symbol of the community's spiritual heritage. For the villagers, Ong-Bak is not simply a statue made of stone. It represents faith, tradition, protection, and a connection to generations of people who have lived in the village. That is why the theft of the statue's head is so devastating. When criminals from Bangkok enter the village and remove the head from Ong-Bak, the community is left shocked and heartbroken. The act is presented not merely as an ordinary theft, but as a violation of something the villagers consider sacred. The village suddenly feels incomplete. People gather around the damaged statue, struggling to understand how someone could deliberately desecrate something so important to them. The atmosphere changes from peaceful confidence to uncertainty and despair. And this is where the movie introduces its central hero, Ting. Ting is not presented as a wealthy businessman, a professional crime fighter, or someone looking for adventure. He is a young man from the village who has devoted himself to Muay Thai and spiritual discipline. His abilities are extraordinary, but his personality is quiet and humble. When the villagers realize that the sacred head has been taken to Bangkok, Ting makes a decision that will completely change his life. He volunteers to go after it. A mission bigger than one person. Ting's decision is important because he is not simply accepting a personal challenge. He is carrying the hopes of an entire community. The villagers have very little power against the criminals who stole the artifact. They do not have influence in Bangkok, and they cannot easily track down the people responsible. But Ting has something they do not. He has determination. He also has an extraordinary understanding of Muay Thai. The villagers place their trust in him, and they collect money to help him travel to Bangkok. The money represents more than financial support. It symbolizes the community's confidence in Ting. He leaves his familiar surroundings carrying the responsibility of everyone who wants Ong-Bak restored. This gives his journey an emotional purpose from the very beginning. He is not traveling to Bangkok because he wants fame. He is not interested in becoming a champion. He is not looking for revenge. He simply wants to bring home something that belongs to his community. The first clue. Don. Ting's investigation begins with the few clues available to him. One of the most important names connected to the case is Don, a criminal involved in the underground world of Bangkok. Don had previously attempted to purchase an amulet in Nong Pradu, making him one of the few people Ting can connect to the city and the stolen artifact. For Ting, this is not much information. But when you have only one lead, even a small connection can become extremely important. So Ting travels to Bangkok and begins searching. The change in environment is dramatic. He has left behind the peaceful rural landscape of his village and entered a crowded city where people move quickly, businesses operate day and night, and hidden criminal networks exist beneath the surface of ordinary life. Ting's personality makes the transition even more interesting. He is disciplined and straightforward. Bangkok's criminal world is not. Here, people lie, manipulate, bargain, and make decisions based on money. Ting is about to discover that physical strength is not the only challenge he will face. He will also have to understand people. Enter Humley, now calling himself George. When Ting arrives in Bangkok, he reconnects with his cousin Humley. But Humley has changed considerably. Instead of living the simple life Ting remembers, Humley has reinvented himself. He has dyed his hair blonde and now calls himself George. This immediately creates a humorous contrast between the two cousins. Ting remains closely connected to his village and its traditions. Humli, meanwhile, appears to have embraced the fast-moving and unpredictable lifestyle of Bangkok. His friendship with Muay Lek adds another layer to his character. The two survive through street-level hustling and risky schemes, including attempts to deceive criminals involved in the illegal drug trade. He is attempting to protect cultural identity from people who see everything through the lens of profit. Kompchuan's reaction. Kompchuan's response to the Buddha head creates another complication. Instead of celebrating the theft, he essentially dismisses the artifact. The very object that caused so much suffering in Nong Pradu does not impress him. This highlights the absurdity of the entire crime. Don has risked everything to steal the artifact. The villagers have been devastated by its disappearance. Ting has traveled all the way to Bangkok to recover it. And yet the person who ultimately receives it considers it worthless. That moment demonstrates how disconnected the criminals are from the cultural significance of what they have stolen. Don receives another order. Kompchuan then instructs Don to dispose of the Buddha head. For Ting, this makes the situation even more urgent. The artifact is now in danger of being permanently lost. The person who stole it no longer cares about it. The person who possesses it does not value it. And the villagers have no idea where it is. Ting's mission has therefore entered a critical stage. He must find the artifact before it disappears. Ting versus the criminal world. The most compelling aspect of Ting's character is that he does not become corrupted by the environment around him. Bangkok introduces him to people who lie and manipulate. Humli steals from him. Criminals exploit others. Underground fighters turn physical skill into entertainment. Yet Ting remains focused. His objective does not change. That consistency makes him an effective protagonist. He is surrounded by chaos, but his purpose remains clear. Humli's complicated role. Humli is not simply a villain. His actions cause problems for Ting, but the character is presented with humor and complexity. He is a hustler who makes questionable choices, yet his relationship with Ting gives him an emotional connection to the story. The contrast between the cousins also gives the audience a way to understand how differently two people can respond to the same environment. Humli adapts by becoming someone else. Ting remains himself. Humli changes his appearance and identity. Ting carries the values of his village with him. Their relationship therefore becomes more than comic relief. It represents two different approaches to survival. Muay Lek's presence. Muay Lek adds another dimension to the Bangkok storyline. Her connection to Humli places her close to the world of street hustling and risky schemes, but she also becomes involved in Ting's journey. Her presence helps create a balance between the movie's intense action and its more personal moments. Through characters like Humli and Muay Lek, the film avoids becoming a non-stop sequence of fights. There are relationships, misunderstandings, humor, and emotional stakes surrounding Ting's mission. The city as a new battlefield. Bangkok itself almost becomes another character. For Ting, the city is unfamiliar territory. The narrow streets, crowded spaces, nightlife, and underground communities create an environment very different from his home village. In Nong Pradu, everyone knows the importance of Ong-Bak. In Bangkok, very few people care. This difference emphasizes Ting's isolation. He is carrying the responsibility of his entire village while surrounded by people who have no emotional connection to his mission. That makes his determination even more impressive. Why the stolen head matters. The stolen Buddha head is more than a plot device. It represents something that cannot be replaced simply by money. A damaged or incomplete statue is not equivalent to an ordinary piece of property. The villagers experience its loss emotionally. Their sense of despair demonstrates how deeply the artifact is connected to their identity. Ting therefore becomes the person who must bridge the gap between the village and the city. He takes the village's hopes into an environment where those hopes are almost invisible. A hero who doesn't seek recognition. Ting's personality becomes increasingly important as the story develops. After defeating the champion, he could easily become arrogant. Instead, he remains focused on the original mission. The attention from the crowd does not distract him. The possibility of becoming famous does not matter. The excitement surrounding his martial arts ability does not replace his responsibility. This makes him fundamentally different from the criminals he encounters. They constantly seek personal advantage. Ting consistently places the mission above himself. The meaning of discipline. Ting's journey can also be interpreted as a test of discipline. His martial arts training has prepared him physically, but the greater challenge is maintaining his values. The city tests him in multiple ways. He faces deception. He faces temptation. He encounters people who are willing to manipulate him. He is dragged into situations he never intended to enter. Yet he continues moving forward. The film therefore suggests that true strength is not simply the ability to defeat an opponent. It is also the ability to remain focused when circumstances become difficult. Action as character development. The fighting sequences are not merely inserted to entertain the audience. They reveal Ting's personality. His calmness during combat demonstrates his control. His refusal to seek unnecessary conflict demonstrates restraint. His willingness to step into difficult situations demonstrates courage. And his technical skill demonstrates the years of discipline behind his abilities. In this sense, the action becomes a form of character development. Instead of telling the audience that Ting is disciplined, the movie shows it through movement. The growing danger. After the underground fight, Ting's situation changes. Before that moment, he was simply an outsider searching for a clue. Now people in Bangkok's criminal world know that he possesses unusual fighting ability. That attention can become a problem. Ting has unintentionally announced himself to people who may have reasons to stop him. His greatest strength could also become the reason he is targeted. This creates a natural escalation. The more Ting learns about the stolen artifact, the more dangerous the search becomes. A clash between two worlds. The story now brings together two very different forms of power. On one side is Ting, representing community, discipline, tradition, and responsibility. The audience understands why Ting cares. We understand why the villagers are devastated. We understand why the journey to Bangkok matters. We understand why Humley creates complications. And we understand how the criminals became connected to the stolen artifact. As a result, the action sequences have context. When Ting enters the fighting tournament, we are not watching a random fighter. We are watching a young man trying to recover the resources needed to complete a mission for his community. When he defeats the champion, the victory is not simply about proving who is stronger. It also changes the direction of his journey. His abilities attract attention. And that attention brings him closer to the criminal world responsible for the theft. The bigger picture. What initially appears to be a simple story about a stolen statue gradually becomes a journey into an unfamiliar world. Ting begins with one objective: find Ong-Bak. But the further he travels, the more he discovers about the people involved. He learns that the theft was connected to criminals. He learns that Don was involved. He encounters Comptuan. He becomes entangled with Humley's complicated lifestyle. And he discovers that his own martial arts abilities have made him a person of interest. The story therefore expands naturally. A village problem becomes a city-wide confrontation. Final perspective on this part of the story. The early journey of Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior, establishes everything that makes the film's central conflict compelling. An ancient Buddha statue has been desecrated. Its head has been stolen from a community that considers it sacred. A young Muay Thai expert named Ting accepts the responsibility of recovering it. He travels from the peaceful environment of Ban Nong Pradu into the unpredictable streets of Bangkok. There he encounters his cousin Humley, now calling himself George, and becomes entangled in a world of hustling, underground competition, and criminal activity. A simple attempt to recover his money unexpectedly reveals Ting's extraordinary martial arts ability. His victory over the underground champion shocks the crowd and attracts the attention of Comptuan, a powerful crime lord connected to the stolen artifact. Meanwhile, the truth about the theft begins to emerge. Don had stolen Ong-Bak's head with the intention of selling it, but Comptuan does not consider it valuable and orders Don to get rid of it. That decision creates the central urgency of Ting's mission. The people who stole the sacred artifact do not understand its meaning. The people who value it are thousands of miles, or worlds, away from the criminals controlling it. Ting stands between those two worlds. He carries the hopes of his village into a city where greed and deception have turned something sacred into an unwanted object. And that is what makes his journey so engaging. He is not searching for wealth. He is not searching for fame. He is not trying to prove that he is the strongest man in Bangkok. He is simply trying to bring something home. But in the world of Ong-Bak, even a simple mission can become extraordinarily dangerous when it crosses paths with criminals who have underestimated the person standing against them. Ting may have arrived in Bangkok as a quiet young man from a rural village. But after his stunning performance in the underground tournament, the city has begun to notice him. And once the criminal world realizes what this seemingly humble Muay Thai practitioner is capable of, recovering the stolen Buddha head will become much more than a search. The second half of Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior, takes everything established earlier in the story and pushes it into a much more dangerous direction. Ting began his journey with one simple goal: recover the stolen head of the sacred Buddha statue Ong-Bak and return it to Ban Nong Pradu. But by this point, the mission has become much larger. Ting is no longer simply searching for an artifact. He is caught between criminal gangs, drug dealers, underground fighters, and a powerful crime lord who has surrounded himself with people willing to do almost anything for him. At the center of this increasingly dangerous situation are Ting, his cousin Humli, and Muay Lek. Their relationship has developed in an unusual way. Ting remains serious and focused on his mission, while Humli continues to make questionable decisions and use his streetwise personality to survive. Muay Lek is caught between their world and the dangerous criminal environment surrounding them. The danger begins to escalate when Humli and Muay Lek find themselves being chased by Peng and his gang after a gambling scheme goes wrong. A gambling scam goes wrong. Humli and Muay Lek have always survived through clever tricks and risky schemes, but this time their plan creates a serious problem. They become involved in a baccarat scam at an illegal street gambling operation. Instead of making an easy profit, they attract the attention of Peng, a drug dealer who is furious after realizing that he has been deceived. Peng does not intend to simply let the matter go. He and his men begin chasing Humli and Muay Lek through the city. The sequence creates a sharp contrast with Ting's personality. Humli and Muay Lek are running because of something they created themselves. Ting, meanwhile, is focused on recovering Ong-Bak. Yet their paths cross once again. When Ting realizes that his cousin and Muay Lek are in trouble, he steps in. Ting enters the chase. The moment Ting joins the confrontation, the balance changes. The gang members expect to overwhelm their targets through numbers. What they do not expect is Ting. His response is not based on panic. He moves with the same control and precision that audiences have already seen in the fighting tournament. One opponent after another is stopped. The sequence reinforces the movie's central idea. Ting may be physically outnumbered, but his training gives him a remarkable advantage. The criminals have weapons, numbers, and aggression. They must help him find Don. A deal between the three. This moment strengthens the relationship between Ting, Humli, and Muay Lek. Ting understands that he needs information. Humli understands the city better than Ting does. Muay Lek is also familiar with the people and places connected to their world. Together, they become an unlikely team. They have very different personalities, but their goals begin to overlap. Ting wants Ong-Bak. Humli and Muay Lek need protection from the people they have angered. Their cooperation becomes necessary, and that cooperation leads them back to the bar. Ting returns to the fighting crowd. Back at the bar, Ting once again finds himself surrounded by people who are fascinated by his fighting ability. This time, his reputation has already started to grow. The crowd knows that he is different. Instead of being seen as an unknown outsider, Ting is becoming someone people want to watch. He agrees to another challenge. What follows is another impressive demonstration of his Muay Thai skills. Ting defeats 3 opponents consecutively. The significance of this moment goes beyond the fights themselves. He earns the respect of the crowd. The people who previously saw him as an outsider now recognize his ability. But the attention also carries a hidden danger. The more famous Ting becomes in the underground fighting world, the more likely it is that dangerous people will notice him. And some of those people already know exactly who he is. Searching for Don. With the help of Humli and Muay Lek, Ting continues tracking down Don. The search eventually leads them to his hideout. At first, it appears that they may finally have found the person who can lead them directly to Ong-Bak. But Don does not simply surrender. Instead, the discovery triggers another major sequence. The characters are forced into a fast-moving escape involving one of Thailand's most recognizable forms of transportation, the tuk-tuk. The tuk-tuk chase. The tuk-tuk chase becomes one of the film's most memorable action sequences. Rather than relying on a conventional car chase, the filmmakers use the distinctive urban environment of Bangkok. The small three-wheeled vehicles move through crowded streets while the characters attempt to escape their pursuers. The chase feels chaotic because the environment itself becomes part of the action. Vehicles, streets, turns, obstacles, and traffic all create additional complications. Humli's familiarity with Bangkok becomes particularly useful. Ting's physical ability also becomes important. The chase is not simply about speed. It is about survival. The characters must stay ahead of people determined to capture them. From the streets to the river. The chase eventually leads them toward a port connected to the Chao Phraya River. What began as a search for Don has now brought Ting closer to the heart of Komchuan's criminal operation. And then Ting discovers something that changes his understanding of the situation. Underwater, hidden away from ordinary people, are stolen Buddha statues. The discovery is shocking. Ong-Bak's head is not necessarily an isolated crime. There is evidence of a much larger operation involving sacred artifacts. Komchuan's collection. The underwater cache reveals the scale of Komchuan's greed. The Buddha statues have been taken from different places and hidden away. For the communities that created or protected them, these objects have cultural and spiritual importance. For Komchuan, they are simply possessions. This makes the villain's operation even more disturbing from a thematic perspective. He does not need to personally care about the religious meaning of the statues. He sees them as objects that can be controlled, traded, or discarded. Ting's mission suddenly takes on a broader significance. He is not simply trying to recover one stolen object. He has discovered a world in which cultural heritage is being treated as property. The police intervene. Once the stolen statues are discovered, the authorities recover them. For a moment, it seems as though justice may finally be catching up with Komchuan. But the story is not finished. Komchuan is not the kind of antagonist who simply accepts defeat. Instead, he responds by attacking the people closest to Ting. This is where the conflict becomes deeply personal. Muay Lek is kidnapped. Komchuan's men kidnap Muay Lek. This changes everything. Ting's mission had previously been centered around an object. Now there is a person's life at stake. Komchuan uses Muay Lek as leverage. He knows Ting is willing to risk himself to help others. He also knows that Humli will do almost anything to protect her. The villain therefore turns their loyalty against them. A cruel bargain. Komchuan sends his message through Humli. If Ting wants Muay Lek and the stolen head of Ong-Bak returned, he must fight Komchuan's bodyguard, Saming. The location is near the Thai-Burmese border. The demand is designed to put Ting in an impossible position. He has no desire to participate in a criminal contest. But refusing could put Muay Lek's life in danger. So Ting accepts. This is one of the clearest moments showing the difference between Ting and the criminals. Komchuan uses people as bargaining tools. Ting puts himself in danger to protect someone else. Saming, a different kind of opponent. Saming is not an ordinary fighter. He has been enhanced by drugs, giving him tremendous aggression and physical power. This creates a different challenge for Ting. Ting's fighting style is based on training, timing, and control. Saming represents brute force amplified by chemical enhancement. The confrontation therefore becomes more than a contest between two martial artists. It becomes a clash between discipline and uncontrolled aggression. The fight begins. When Ting enters the confrontation with Saming, he immediately realizes that this opponent is dangerous. Saming attacks with enormous force. The fight is intense and physically exhausting. Ting attempts to defend himself and respond with his technique, but the situation is not fair. Komchuan does not want an honest competition. He wants Ting eliminated. The terms of the deal are designed to create maximum danger. Ting makes a sacrifice. Ting eventually realizes that the only way to satisfy the arrangement is to allow himself to lose. He throws in the towel. The decision is an attempt to protect Ting from further punishment. It also demonstrates how much Humley's relationship with his cousin has changed. Earlier, Humley stole Ting's money. Now he is willing to intervene to protect him. The two cousins have gradually moved from distrust toward genuine loyalty. Comptuan breaks his promise. But Comptuan never intended to honor the deal. Even after Ting has done what was demanded, the villain refuses to release Muay or return Ong-Bak's head. This is the moment when the true nature of the bargain becomes obvious. There was never going to be a peaceful resolution. Comptuan wanted Ting eliminated. The promise was simply a trap. The order to kill. Comptuan orders his men to kill Ting, Humley, and Muay. The situation becomes a fight for survival. The trio has been betrayed. There is no negotiation left. No agreement. No promise. Only escape. Ting and Humley must fight their way through Comptuan's men. Ting and Humley fight together. One of the most satisfying developments in this section is seeing Ting and Humley working together. Their personalities remain completely different. Ting is controlled and disciplined. Humley is more unpredictable. But they now share a common goal. They need to survive. They also need to rescue Muay and recover Ong-Bak. Their combined efforts allow them to overcome the immediate threat. The two cousins have finally become a team. The mountain cave. Their pursuit eventually takes them toward a mountain cave. Inside, they discover another part of Comptuan's operation. Comptuan's men are working on a massive Buddha statue. The scale of the operation is immediately striking. The criminals are not simply stealing small artifacts. They are dismantling and exploiting enormous cultural objects. The scene reinforces the film's recurring conflict between spiritual heritage and criminal greed. The giant Buddha. The enormous Buddha statue becomes an important visual symbol. Its size makes the criminals appear small in comparison. They may believe they control everything. But the statue represents something larger than them. It represents the traditions and communities they have tried to exploit. Ting's arrival interrupts their operation. And once again, the only way forward is through a fight. Ting takes on the remaining thugs. Ting enters the cave and confronts the remaining criminals. The fights are intense, but Ting's technique continues to give him an advantage. He has already survived multiple opponents. Now he is exhausted and injured, yet he keeps moving. The physical challenge mirrors his emotional determination. Every step forward brings him closer to the stolen Buddha head. The final confrontation with Saming. Saming is also present. The fighter who previously overwhelmed Ting now becomes part of the final confrontation. But circumstances have changed. Ting has already survived his brutal encounter with him. Now Ting is determined to stop him. Their second confrontation feels like a final test. Saming represents the most physically intimidating opponent Ting has faced. Ting represents discipline, technique, and determination. Ting overcomes Saming. Despite the danger, Ting manages to defeat Saming. The victory is important because it demonstrates that Ting can overcome an opponent whose strength was artificially enhanced. The fight becomes a culmination of everything established about Ting's martial arts ability. He does not need anger to win. He does not need cruelty. He relies on skill and determination. But the victory comes at a terrible cost. Comptuan fires a gun. Just when it seems that Ting has survived the final physical challenge, Comptuan attacks. Rather than facing Ting directly, the crime lord uses a firearm. Ting is shot. The moment demonstrates the fundamental difference between the two men. Ting has fought opponents face to face. Comptuan relies on power, manipulation, and weapons. The conflict has never been a fair contest. The Buddha head becomes the target. Comptuan then turns his attention toward Ong-Bak's head. Instead of accepting defeat, he decides to destroy the artifact. He takes a sledgehammer and prepares to smash the sacred object. For the villagers, this would be devastating. After everything Ting has endured, the artifact is moments away from being destroyed. Komchuan's decision also reveals his complete lack of respect for what the object represents. If he cannot possess it, he is willing to destroy it. Humlee's ultimate sacrifice. Then Humlee does something extraordinary. He places himself between Komchuan and the Buddha head. He protects the sacred artifact with his own body. Komchuan strikes him repeatedly with the hammer. Humlee absorbs the punishment rather than allowing the artifact to be destroyed. This moment transforms his character. Earlier in the story, Humlee stole Ting's money though he acted selfishly. He lived through scams and deception. But now he makes the ultimate selfless decision. He protects Ting. He protects Ong-Bak. And he does it knowing the consequences could be fatal. The falling Buddha. Then the giant Buddha statue begins to collapse. The enormous structure falls at precisely the moment when the conflict reaches its climax. Komchuan is crushed beneath it. The man who believed he could control sacred objects and other people's lives is ultimately destroyed by the very structure he was exploiting. The moment carries powerful symbolic meaning. Komchuan treated the Buddha as an object. But his own greed and actions contribute to his downfall. Humlee's final moments. Although Komchuan is gone, the victory is heartbreaking. Humlee has been critically injured. The character who once seemed primarily motivated by money now has very little time left. He looks toward Ting. The transformation is complete. He is no longer simply the irresponsible cousin who caused problems. He has become someone who sacrificed himself for another person. The Buddha head is finally returned. Humlee gives Ong-Bak's head to Ting. The object Ting has been searching for throughout the entire story is finally back in his hands. But the moment is not simply triumphant. It is emotional. Ting has succeeded. Yet the journey has cost him someone he cares about. Humlee's final request is also important. He asks Ting to look after Muay. Even at the end, his concern is for someone else. The meaning of Humlee's redemption. Humlee's character arc is one of the most emotional elements of the story. He begins as a hustler. He steals the money Ting needs. He makes irresponsible choices. He repeatedly creates problems. But his relationship with Ting gradually changes him. By the end, he is willing to sacrifice himself to protect both Ting and the sacred artifact. His death gives his earlier actions a new context. It does not erase his mistakes. Instead, it demonstrates that a person can change through loyalty, responsibility, and sacrifice. Ting's promise. Humlee's final request gives Ting another responsibility. The original mission was to recover Ong-Bak. Now Ting must also look after Muay. The journey that began with a stolen statue has therefore changed Ting's life permanently. He has gained knowledge of the world outside his village. He has faced criminals. He has survived extraordinary physical challenges. And he has lost someone close to him. Returning home. Eventually, Ting brings the sacred Buddha head back to Ban Nong Pradu. The emotional contrast is powerful. At the beginning of the movie, the village was filled with despair because Ong-Bak had been damaged. Now the missing piece has finally returned. The villagers gather to celebrate. The community is restored. The mission is complete. Humlee's ashes return to the village. But the celebration is not without sadness. Humlee's ashes are brought back to the village. A monk carries them as part of a solemn procession. The imagery connects Humlee's death to the spiritual world that Ting has been trying to protect throughout the story. His journey began with the village's sacred statue. It ends with his own remains being brought home to the same community. The elephant procession. The procession takes place on an elephant's back, creating a striking final image. The elephant carries the ashes toward Ban Nong Pradu while the villagers gather. This sequence combines grief and celebration. The village has recovered Ong-Bak. But it has also lost someone. That mixture of emotions makes the conclusion more meaningful than a simple action movie victory. Ting and Muay. Ting and Muay remain together as the story closes. Ting has promised to look after her. The relationship carries forward the emotional legacy of Humlee. His final request continues to influence Ting even after his death. The characters have all been changed by the journey. Ting has become more experienced. Muay has survived a dangerous ordeal. And Humley has left behind a final act of courage that changes how the others remember him. What the ending says about strength. The ending of Ong-Bak suggests that strength is not simply physical. Ting possesses extraordinary physical ability. But Humley's final sacrifice demonstrates another kind of strength. It takes courage to protect someone else when doing so may cost your life. This makes Humley's final action just as important to the film's emotional conclusion as Ting's victories in combat. The sacred object returns to its community. The return of Ong-Bak's head completes the central narrative circle. At the beginning, the villagers are devastated because something sacred has been taken from them. At the end, it has been restored. The physical journey from village to city and back again mirrors Ting's personal transformation. He leaves as a young martial artist carrying his community's hopes. He returns having faced a criminal empire and survived extraordinary danger. Why the final act works? The final act works because the action is connected to character and theme. The tuk-tuk chase is exciting because the characters are trying to escape danger. The underwater Buddha statues matter because they reveal the scale of Comptuan's crimes. The fight with Saming matters because Ting is protecting Muay. Humley's sacrifice matters because it completes his transformation. And the return of Ong-Bak matters because it fulfills the promise Ting made to his village. The action therefore never exists completely on its own. It is connected to the character's goals. Final critical perspective. The conclusion of Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior combines action spectacle with a surprisingly emotional story about responsibility, cultural heritage, friendship, and redemption. Ting's journey begins with the theft of a sacred Buddha head. What follows is a dangerous descent into Bangkok's criminal world, where he encounters hustlers, fighters, drug dealers, and a crime lord who treats sacred objects as disposable property. Along the way, Ting's extraordinary Muay Thai abilities become the key to surviving increasingly dangerous situations. But physical strength alone does not solve the problem. Ting must also rely on trust. He must accept help from Humley. He must protect Muay. And he must be willing to sacrifice his own pride and safety for others. The final confrontation brings all of these ideas together. Comptuan represents greed and exploitation. Ting represents discipline and responsibility. Humley represents redemption. The Buddha statue represents cultural and spiritual heritage. When Comptuan attempts to destroy Ong-Bak, Humley's decision to protect it with his own body becomes the emotional climax of the story. His sacrifice proves that the character who once seemed selfish has finally discovered something more important than money. He chooses loyalty. He chooses courage. He chooses to protect something meaningful. And although Humley does not survive, his final actions allow Ting to complete the mission. The Buddha head returns to Ban Nong Pradu. The villagers celebrate. The community's sacred symbol is restored. But the celebration is accompanied by remembrance, because Humley's ashes return with the procession. That ending gives Ong-Bak a deeper emotional dimension. The movie is remembered primarily for Tony Jaa's extraordinary martial arts performance, but its story also revolves around the idea that true victory is not simply defeating an opponent. Sometimes victory means keeping a promise. Sometimes it means protecting something that belongs to an entire community. And sometimes the greatest act of strength is sacrificing yourself so someone else can carry the mission forward. Muay is caught in the dangerous environment surrounding Humley's schemes and the criminal world of Bangkok. Her presence also helps balance the movie's intense physical action with more personal interactions. She is not simply there to react to the male characters. Her relationship with Humley creates emotional stakes, while her involvement with Ting's journey helps connect the different parts of the story. Muay also becomes an important source of motivation during the later part of the movie. When she is kidnapped, Ting's mission becomes even more urgent. The stakes are no longer limited to recovering a stolen artifact. A person's safety is now involved. Chupong Pantanarankel as Saming Siptid. Chupong Pantanarankel plays Saming Siptid, one of Ting's most formidable opponents. Saming represents a very different kind of fighter from Ting. He is physically intimidating and enhanced through drug use, making his fighting style aggressive and dangerous. This creates a strong contrast between the two men. Ting represents discipline and martial arts training. Saming represents physical aggression pushed beyond normal limits. Their confrontation is one of the movie's major physical tests for Ting. The casting of Pantana Ankle helps give the character a threatening presence. Saming does not need lengthy speeches to establish himself as a dangerous opponent. His physicality does much of the work. Suchao Pongwalai as Komchuan. Suchao Pongwalai plays Komchuan, the powerful crime lord at the center of the criminal operation. Komchuan is an unusual villain. He uses a wheelchair and communicates with the assistance of an electrolarynx. Yet these physical characteristics do not diminish his authority. His power comes from the people who work for him. He commands henchmen, controls criminal operations, and manipulates others to achieve his goals. Pongwalai's performance emphasizes Komchuan's cold authority. He does not need to be physically powerful to be dangerous. His influence allows him to make other people take risks on his behalf. Komchuan as the antagonist. Komchuan also represents one of the film's major themes: greed. He sees valuable cultural objects as possessions that can be controlled. The stolen Buddha statues are not sacred to him. They are assets. This makes him the philosophical opposite of Ting. Ting sees Ong-Bak as something belonging to a community. Komchuan sees objects in terms of ownership and usefulness. That difference gives the central conflict more meaning. The final confrontation between them is therefore not merely hero versus villain. It is also a conflict between two completely different value systems. Wonakit Siriopat as Don. Wonakit Siriopat plays Don, one of Komchuan's henchmen and the person connected directly to the theft of Ong-Bak's head. Don becomes one of Ting's most important early clues. Ting learns that Don has connections to the stolen artifact and begins tracking him through Bangkok. Don represents the lower level of Komchuan's criminal network. He is involved in the theft, but he does not possess the same authority as Komchuan. His role demonstrates how large criminal operations often depend on people willing to carry out orders. Chumphorn Thefithak as Uncle Mao. Chumphorn Thefithak plays Uncle Mao. The character contributes to the broader world surrounding Ting's journey. Supporting figures like Uncle Mao help make the film's setting feel populated rather than empty. The movie does not exist only around Ting and his enemies. There are people throughout the village and city whose lives intersect with the main story. These supporting performances help create that sense of a larger community. Rungrawi Barajindakal as Njek. Rungrawi Barajindakal plays Njek. Although the role is smaller than the central characters, Njek is part of the network of supporting figures who populate the movie's world. These characters are important because they help establish the atmosphere surrounding the criminal and street-level environments. In an action movie, even smaller roles can contribute to the feeling that the hero is moving through a living world. Chithavuth Watcharakan as Peng. Chithavuth Watcharakan plays Peng. Peng becomes involved in the storyline surrounding Humli and Mulek. His presence helps create one of the movie's chase sequences when his group pursues them after their gambling scheme goes wrong. Peng's role reinforces the film's depiction of Bangkok as a place filled with competing criminal interests. Humli's decisions may seem funny at first, but the consequences can quickly become serious. The bodyguards. Komchuan's authority is reinforced by his group of bodyguards. Several performers play these roles. Somjul Jonmunti as Bodyguard 1, Somkai Moonma as Bodyguard 2, Taeworn Tonapan as Bodyguard 3, Dan Chupong as Bodyguard 4, Chaiporn Gunmuntri as Bodyguard 5, Don Ferguson as Bodyguard 6. Although these characters may not receive extensive individual development, they serve an important purpose. They demonstrate the reach of Komchuan's criminal organization. Ting is rarely confronting only one isolated enemy. He is facing an entire network. The bodyguards also provide additional physical challenges for the action choreography. Dan Chupong as Bodyguard 4. Dan Chupong deserves particular attention because of his background in Thai action cinema. His appearance as Bodyguard 4 adds another connection between the movie's acting ensemble and the world of martial arts performance. Chupong later became known for action-oriented roles and physically demanding performances. His presence fits naturally into a movie where choreography and athletic ability are central to the storytelling. Pana Ritikrai as a Nong Pradu villager. Pana Ritikrai appears uncredited as a villager from Nong Pradu. Ritikrai's contribution to Ong-Bak, however, goes far beyond this small acting appearance. He was the film's action choreographer and one of the major creative forces behind its martial arts style. His work helped shape the physical language of the movie. The choreography is a major reason the film became internationally recognized. Hrithik Rai understood how to showcase Tony Jaa's abilities while creating sequences that felt intense and visually distinctive. The club fighters. The movie also features several performers as club fighters. These include: each opponent helps demonstrate a different challenge. Ting's ability to overcome them establishes his reputation within the fighting community. David Ismalone as Mad Dog. David Ismalone appears as Mad Dog. The name itself immediately communicates the kind of personality associated with the underground fighting world. These fighters are designed to feel physically intimidating and unpredictable. Their purpose is not necessarily to receive complex character arcs. Instead, they serve as tests for Ting's skill. Hans Erik as Pearl Harbor. Hans Erik plays Pearl Harbor. Like the other club fighters, his role contributes to the atmosphere of the underground competition. These opponents allow the film to present Ting against a variety of physical threats rather than relying on a single repeated style. The result is a broader showcase for Muay Thai choreography. Paul Gaius as Lee. Paul Gaius plays Lee. The character is another part of the fighting environment that surrounds Ting in Bangkok. The importance of these smaller roles becomes obvious when looking at the movie's overall structure. Ting's reputation is not established through dialogue. It is established through a series of physical encounters. The club fighters therefore become stepping stones in his journey. Nick Cara as Big Bear. Nick Cara plays Big Bear. The character's name suggests the physical intimidation expected from the underground fighters. Ting's encounters with larger opponents reinforce one of the movie's recurring ideas. Size alone does not determine the outcome of a fight. Technique, timing, movement, and discipline can allow a smaller fighter to overcome someone with greater physical mass. Nudapal Asavabakin as Toshiro. Nudapal Asavabakin plays Toshiro. His inclusion adds another opponent to Ting's underground fighting experience. The collection of fighters gives the audience a sense that Ting is entering a competitive environment filled with experienced combatants. Yet each time he steps into the ring, his skills set him apart. Tawizin Visanuyathin as Dr. Sak. Tawizin Visanuyathin appears as Dr. Sak. The role adds another character to the club fighting sequence and contributes to the variety of people inhabiting the underground environment. These supporting performers help make the fighting scenes feel like part of a larger culture rather than isolated action sequences created solely for the hero. Why the ensemble matters? It would be easy to look at Ong-Bak and say that Tony Jaa is the only reason the film works. His performance is certainly the biggest attraction. But the supporting cast is essential to creating the world in which Ting's abilities can shine. Without Humlee, the movie would lose much of its humor and emotional development. Without Muay Thai, the story would lose an important emotional connection. Without Komchuan, there would be no central criminal force driving the conflict. Without Don, there would be less connection between Ting's village mission and Bangkok's criminal world. Without Saming, Ting would not face one of his most physically demanding challenges. And without the bodyguards and club fighters, the movie would lose much of its sense of escalating danger. The contrast between the characters. One of the film's strongest casting qualities is contrast. Ting is disciplined. Humlee is chaotic. Muay Thai is caught between worlds. Komchuan is calculating. Don is obedient to the criminal hierarchy. Saming is physically aggressive. The bodyguards represent organized force. The club fighters represent the underground fighting culture. These different personalities create a world where Ting's character becomes easier to understand. We recognize his values because we see how different he is from the people around him. Tony Jaa and Pechtai Wongkamlao. The chemistry between Tony Jaa and Pechtai Wongkamlao is especially important. Their characters are almost opposites. Ting rarely wastes words. Humlee can be energetic, humorous, and unpredictable. This creates a natural comedic rhythm. Whenever Ting's seriousness threatens to make the story too intense, Humlee can introduce humor. And when Humlee's behavior becomes too irresponsible, Ting provides a moral center. Their relationship gradually changes from frustration to loyalty. That development gives the movie more emotional weight. Pumwari Yotkamol's contribution. Muay also helps connect the emotional and action elements. She is not simply a background character. Her relationship with Humlee gives his character additional motivation, while her kidnapping creates a major turning point for Ting. The danger surrounding her makes the conflict more personal. Suddenly Ting is fighting not only for a sacred object but also for the safety of someone connected to his friends. The villainous presence of Komchuan. Suchao Pongwalai's performance as Komchuan also demonstrates that a villain does not need to fight constantly to be threatening. Komchuan spends much of the story using other people. He gives orders. He makes decisions. He manipulates situations. His power comes from control. That makes Ting's eventual confrontation with him satisfying because Ting represents a completely different kind of strength. Ting earns respect through his abilities. Komchuan demands obedience through fear. The physical performers. One of the most important things about the cast is that many performers are physically capable action specialists. This is essential to Ong-Bak. The film was designed around practical martial arts performance. The opponents need to move convincingly. The choreography needs performers capable of executing demanding sequences. The action therefore depends on an ensemble that can physically participate in the spectacle. Tony Jaa's performance may be the centerpiece, but the supporting fighters create the environment in which that performance becomes possible. The cast and the film's legacy. The success of Ong-Bak helped elevate Tony Jaa into international recognition. He went on to star in Tom Yum Goong, known internationally as the Protector in the United States and Warrior King in the United Kingdom. He also returned to the Ong-Bak universe with later prequel films. But the original movie remains particularly important because it introduced audiences to his screen identity. Ting became the character through which viewers discovered Jaa's combination of physical control, athleticism, and Muay Thai technique. Final assessment of the cast. The cast of Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior works because every major performer contributes something different. Tony Jaa provides the extraordinary physical centerpiece. Pechtai Wongkamlao provides humor and an unexpectedly emotional character journey. Pumwari Yotkamol adds emotional grounding. Chatapong Pantanarankul provides Ting with a physically intimidating opponent. Suchao Pongwalai creates a villain whose power comes from control and criminal influence. Wanakit Sirioput connects Ting to the theft. The supporting performers and bodyguards expand the criminal world. And the club fighters create the competitive environment that allows Ting's reputation to grow. The movie's cast therefore functions as a carefully assembled action ensemble. The story may be centered on one young man and one stolen Buddha head, but the performances around him make the world feel larger. Ultimately, Ong-Bak belongs to Tony Jaa, but it is not successful because he works alone. It succeeds because the surrounding cast gives him characters to challenge, characters to protect, characters to oppose, and characters who reveal different sides of his personality. Ting's silence becomes more powerful when placed beside Humlee's humor. His discipline becomes more impressive when compared with the chaos of the criminal world. His physical skill becomes more spectacular when tested against capable opponents. And his sense of responsibility becomes more meaningful when the people around him are forced to make difficult choices. That is what makes the cast of Ong-Bak so effective. Each performer contributes another piece to the movie's larger identity. But at the center of it all stands Tony Jaa, whose performance as Ting transformed a simple martial arts hero into an international action icon. The film's legacy is therefore not only about who appeared on screen. It is about what this particular group of performers helped create together. A Thai action movie that placed Muay Thai, practical physical performance, and a new martial arts star in front of audiences around the world. Before Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior became internationally recognized as one of the standout martial arts films of the early 2000s. It began with a much more ambitious idea: introduce the world to the physical language and cultural identity of Muay Thai. At the heart of that ambition was Tony Jaa. Jaa had trained in Muay Thai from childhood, and his understanding of the discipline was not something he developed specifically for the camera. Martial arts were already an important part of his life. When the opportunity came to create a movie built around his physical abilities, he and his mentor, Pana Ritikrai, wanted to do something that would make Muay Thai accessible to audiences far beyond Thailand. The result was Ong-Bak. What makes the film's production story particularly fascinating is that the movie's international success was not guaranteed. Before audiences around the world saw Tony Jaa performing spectacular martial arts sequences, Jaa and Ritikrai had to convince people that their idea was worth supporting. They faced financial obstacles, worked to create demonstration footage, and relied heavily on practical choreography and physical performance. The production journey therefore mirrors the movie's own central theme. Ting begins with a simple mission and faces increasingly difficult obstacles. Jaa and his collaborators began with a simple ambition and faced their own obstacles before reaching an international audience, bringing Muay Thai to the mainstream. One of Tony Jaa's major motivations for making Ong-Bak was his desire to bring Muay Thai to a much wider audience. Martial arts cinema had already developed a powerful international following through performers such as Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li. But Jaa and Panna believed there was another martial arts tradition that deserved greater international attention. Muay Thai offered a distinctive physical vocabulary. It uses punches, kicks, knees, elbows, and shins, producing a style that can look extremely dynamic on screen. The filmmakers wanted audiences to recognize that Muay Thai was more than a combat technique. It was a discipline with history and cultural identity. That idea became one of the foundations of the movie. Muay Thai and Muay Boran. The film is often associated with traditional Muay Thai and elements of older Thai martial arts traditions such as Muay Boran. Muay Thai is widely known as a striking-based combat sport. Its distinctive use of fists, feet, knees, and elbows gives it a different visual identity from many other martial arts styles. For a filmmaker interested in creating spectacular action without relying heavily on computer-generated effects, this physical vocabulary offered enormous possibilities. Every strike could become part of the choreography. Every movement could communicate character. Every sequence could showcase a different aspect of the discipline. That made Muay Thai ideal for the kind of action movie Jaa and Panna wanted to create. Panna Ritikrai, mentor and action architect. A crucial figure behind the movie was Panna Ritikrai. Ritikrai was Tony Jaa's mentor and an experienced figure in Thai action filmmaking. His background was particularly important because he understood how to translate martial arts ability into cinematic choreography. A skilled martial artist does not automatically become a great screen fighter. Movie action requires timing, camera awareness, performance, rhythm, and an understanding of how an audience sees movement. Ritikrai knew how to combine those elements. His choreography helped create the physical identity that made Ong-Bak stand out. Instead of treating martial arts as a small component of the film, the production made it central. The production did not begin with unlimited resources. Jaa and Ritikrai struggled to raise enough money to produce a demonstration reel. This was a critical stage. They needed to show potential supporters what Tony Jaa could actually do. Explaining that a performer was an exceptional martial artist was one thing. Showing that ability on camera was something else. A demonstration reel could provide the evidence. The goal was simple: create footage powerful enough to make people believe that the project could become a major martial arts movie. But even producing that footage presented financial challenges. The first demo reel. The first demonstration reel was reportedly made using expired film stock. That detail says a great deal about how difficult the early production process was. Instead of having the ideal equipment and unlimited resources, the filmmakers worked with what they could obtain. The footage was important enough that they wanted it to serve as a professional presentation of Jaa's abilities. But using expired film stock created another problem. The first attempt could not provide the quality they wanted. The team therefore had to raise additional money and start again. Starting over. Starting over is one of the most revealing parts of the production story. For filmmakers working with limited resources, a failed demonstration reel could have ended the project. Instead, Jaa and his collaborators persisted. They raised more money. They produced another reel. And they continued trying to convince the industry that a Muay Thai-centered action film could work. That persistence eventually paid off. The demonstration footage helped attract interest and allowed the project to move forward. Tony Jaa's physical preparation. Another important aspect of production was Jha's background. Because he had trained in Muay Thai since childhood, the filmmakers were not starting with an actor who needed to learn the basics of the style. Jha already understood the discipline. This gave the choreography a level of authenticity. His movements could be designed around his natural strengths. Rather than hiding limitations through editing, the filmmakers could build sequences that showcased what Jha could actually perform. This became one of the defining characteristics of the film. Designing action around the performer. A major advantage of having a martial artist as the lead is that the choreography can be designed specifically for that performer. Pana Ritikrai understood Tony Jha's abilities. He knew what Jha could execute. He knew how far to push the choreography. And he knew how to create sequences that would highlight Jha's strengths. This partnership between performer and choreographer became one of the movie's greatest assets. The action does not feel as though it was designed for a generic hero. It feels designed for Tony Jha. Practical action as the movie's identity. One of the reasons Ong-Bak attracted so much attention was its emphasis on physical performance. The film's action was built around martial arts choreography and practical movement. This created a different viewing experience from action movies that depended heavily on visual effects. Audiences could see the performer moving through space. They could appreciate the timing. They could observe the athleticism. And they could feel the impact of the choreography. The human body became the centerpiece of the spectacle. Why this approach was important? At the beginning of the 2000s, action cinema was rapidly evolving. Digital effects were becoming increasingly sophisticated. Filmmakers could create spectacular scenes through computer-generated imagery. Yet Ong-Bak took a different approach. Its strongest visual effect was Tony Jha himself. The filmmakers essentially said, "Watch what this performer can actually do." That philosophy gave the movie a distinctive identity. It also helped create the impression that audiences were watching something unusually physical. The foot chase through the alleys. One of the production's more playful details can be found during the foot chase through the alleys. Written on a shophouse door is the message, "Hi Spielberg, let's do it together." The spelling is part of the original message. The reference is to Steven Spielberg. It reveals something about the filmmakers' ambitions. They were making a Thai action film, but they were already imagining opportunities beyond the local market. They wanted the movie to reach major international filmmakers and audiences. The message functions almost like a cinematic calling card. It says, in effect, that these filmmakers believed their style of action deserved to be seen on a much larger stage. A message to Steven Spielberg. The reference to Spielberg is particularly interesting because of what Spielberg represented. He was one of Hollywood's most internationally recognized directors. For a Thai action filmmaker and performer trying to attract global attention, working with someone of that stature represented the highest level of international recognition. The message was therefore more than a joke. It expressed ambition. The filmmakers wanted to demonstrate that Thai action cinema could compete for attention on a global stage. The Tuk Tuk Chase and Luc Besson reference. Another clever production detail appears during the famous Tuk Tuk Chase. A pillar visible on the left side of the screen contains a message directed toward Luc Besson. "Hi, Luc Besson, we are waiting for you." Again, the message is playful, but it also reflects the filmmaker's international ambitions. Luc Besson was a major French producer and director associated with internationally successful action cinema. The reference effectively places a message inside the movie aimed at someone who might help bring Thai action filmmaking to a broader audience. An unexpected connection to Europa Corp. The Luc Besson reference becomes even more interesting because of what happened afterward. Besson's company, Europa Corp, eventually acquired the international distribution rights to Ong-Bak. That means the message in the film became remarkably close to reality. The filmmakers were effectively saying that they wanted international attention. Eventually, an internationally significant company associated with Luc Besson became involved in distributing the movie beyond Thailand. This helped connect Ong-Bak to a much wider audience. From local ambition to international release. The production story is therefore a classic example of how a film can travel beyond its original market. At the beginning, Jha and Ritikrai were struggling to finance a demonstration reel. They were working with limited resources. They were trying to prove that their concept could succeed. Then the film was completed. International interest grew. And the movie found distribution beyond Thailand. The journey from those early challenges to international recognition is one of the most remarkable aspects of Ong-Bak. The importance of Panna and Jar's partnership. The collaboration between Tony Jaa and Panna Ritikrai was essential. Jaa brought physical talent and a desire to introduce Muay Thai to a larger audience. Panna brought experience in martial arts choreography and action filmmaking. Together, they created a production philosophy centered on physical authenticity. This partnership helped define the movie's action sequences. It also helped establish Jaa's screen identity. Without Panna's understanding of choreography, Jaa's abilities might not have translated as effectively to film. Without Jaa's extraordinary physical performance, the choreography would not have had the same impact. Action as a marketing tool. The production also understood something important about international movie marketing. The action itself could sell the movie. Even viewers unfamiliar with Thai cinema could watch Tony Jaa performing remarkable movements and immediately understand why the film was unusual. This made the action demonstration footage particularly important. The filmmakers did not have to rely entirely on complicated explanations. They could simply show the performer. Once audiences saw what Jaa could do, the project's appeal became much easier to understand. The star-making effect. The production of Ong-Bak ultimately created a new international martial arts star. Tony Jaa's physical ability was not hidden behind a large ensemble of established celebrities. He was the attraction. The movie introduced him as someone audiences had not seen before. That gave his performance a freshness that became part of the film's appeal. Viewers were effectively discovering a new action performer at the same time the filmmakers were introducing their interpretation of Thai martial arts to the world. The importance of cultural identity. The production was also significant because it did not completely abandon Thai identity in order to reach international viewers. The story remained connected to Thai culture. The central artifact is a Buddha image. The hero comes from a rural Thai village. Muay Thai is central to the action. The environments are recognizably Thai. And the production uses local settings and cultural references as part of its identity. This gave the film something distinctive. It did not simply imitate Hollywood action cinema. It brought its own cultural background into the action genre. The Buddha head as a production symbol. Even the central object in the story reflects this philosophy. Ong-Bak is not simply a generic treasure. The Buddha image gives the story cultural meaning. Ting's journey therefore becomes an opportunity to explore the contrast between rural tradition and urban criminal exploitation. The action may be spectacular, but the film's central motivation remains connected to cultural heritage. That combination helped separate Ong-Bak from action films that were primarily focused on revenge or personal ambition, creating a global martial arts language. One of the greatest production achievements of Ong-Bak was making its action accessible even to people unfamiliar with Muay Thai. You do not need to understand every technical detail of the martial art to appreciate the choreography. The movement communicates its own excitement. The rhythm of strikes is easy to recognize. The athleticism is immediately visible. And Tony Jaa's physical commitment creates an emotional reaction. This is what makes the movie's action internationally accessible. The physical demands of filming. A production built around practical martial arts inevitably places significant demands on its performers. The choreography has to be rehearsed. Timing has to be precise. Camera placement matters. Performers need to know where to move. The environment must be carefully controlled. And the action must appear spontaneous even though it has been carefully planned. The result is a form of filmmaking that combines athletic preparation with cinematic technique. Why the camera matters. Martial arts choreography can lose much of its impact if the camera cuts too quickly or hides the movement. Ong-Bak frequently emphasizes the performer. This allows audiences to appreciate the continuity of movement. The viewer can see the physical sequence rather than only seeing fragments of it. That approach was particularly valuable for Tony Jaa because one of his greatest strengths was his ability to perform complex movements himself. The camera therefore becomes a tool for displaying his physical skill rather than concealing it. The B-movie background. Pana Ritikri's background in Thai B-movie action filmmaking also influenced the production. B-movies have historically been associated with limited budgets, creative experimentation, and an emphasis on genre entertainment. Ritikri's experience helped him understand how to achieve strong action effects without depending on enormous resources. This background became an advantage. Instead of allowing budget limitations to prevent ambitious action, the filmmakers focused on what they could do exceptionally well. That was the physical performance, turning limitations into strengths. The production story of Ong-Bak demonstrates how limitations can sometimes produce a distinctive artistic style. Limited resources encouraged the filmmakers to focus on choreography. The need to prove Tony Jaa's abilities led to demonstration footage. The desire to introduce Muay Thai to the mainstream led to a movie built around the martial art. The absence of a huge international star cast made Jaa's performance the central attraction. The result was a film with a very clear identity. The road to international recognition. Once Ong-Bak reached international audiences, viewers responded strongly to the physicality of the action and Tony Jaa's performance. The movie became an important part of the international conversation surrounding martial arts cinema. It was not created primarily around digital spectacle. It was created around physical ability. It was not designed simply to imitate another country's martial arts cinema. It was designed to introduce Thai martial arts to the world. And it was not built around an already established international superstar. It helped create one. Final assessment. The production story of Ong-Bak, Muay Thai Warrior, is a story of persistence, ambition, and physical filmmaking. Tony Jaa and Pana Ritikri began with a clear goal: bring the power and identity of Muay Thai to a mainstream international audience. They faced financial obstacles while trying to create demonstration footage. Their first reel was made with expired film stock and ultimately had to be redone. But instead of abandoning the project, they continued. That persistence became one of the foundations of the film's eventual success. Pana Ritikri's choreography gave the action its distinctive identity, while Tony Jaa's years of Muay Thai training allowed him to perform movements that became the movie's greatest attraction. The filmmaker's international ambitions are even visible within the movie itself. A message addressed to Steven Spielberg appears during a foot chase. Another message directed toward Luc Besson appears during the tuk-tuk chase. These details reveal how strongly the creators wanted their work to travel beyond Thailand. The story becomes especially satisfying because the Luc Besson reference eventually connected with reality. EuropaCorp went on to acquire international distribution rights. What began as a small production with uncertain financial prospects eventually reached a global audience. And that journey is central to understanding Ong-Bak. The movie did not become memorable simply because it contained impressive fights. It became memorable because those fights represented something. They represented Tony Jaa's lifelong training. They represented Pana Ritikri's action filmmaking philosophy. They represented a desire to showcase Thai martial arts on an international stage. And they demonstrated that a film built around practical physical performance could capture the attention of audiences around the world. The production of Ong-Bak therefore deserves to be remembered as a remarkable example of filmmakers turning limited resources into a distinctive cinematic identity. The filmmakers did not need to hide their limitations. They turned their greatest available strength, the extraordinary physical ability of Tony Jaa, into the centerpiece of the entire project. And the gamble worked. Ong-Bak helped transform Tony Jaa from a relatively unknown Thai performer into an internationally recognized martial arts star. It helped introduce a new generation of viewers to the visual power of Muay Thai. And it demonstrated that great action does not always require the biggest budget or the most elaborate technology. Sometimes, the most impressive special effect is a highly trained performer doing something that audiences can hardly believe is possible. That is the production philosophy at the heart of Ong-Bak. A simple idea. A determined performer. An experienced mentor. A difficult road to financing. A commitment to practical martial arts. And an ambition to make Thai action cinema visible to the world.